And 3, 2, 1, boom. And we were back in another episode of Socratic Gamers. This episode brought to you by Zen Real Clothing Co. ZenRealClothingCo.com. Check it out. So, we're back to Socratic Dialogue, and I just finished reading the second installment in this, ancient...
Book of Secrets?
Ancient Book of Secrets, yeah, pretty much. You know what's funny? Every book is a book of secrets because nobody reads books anymore. So
yeah, I watch docs.
Yeah, exactly, right. Fun fact: did you know that the Library of Alexandria, any boat that would come in to the shores of Alexandria, they would take all the books, they'd copy them, then they'd give the books back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that's why it was the biggest library in the world.
Yeah,
and then it got burnt down during, I forgot, it was Persian invasion? I think so.
Was it the Persian invasion? Or
I think they had a different name. Because in the book they reference somebody else. This isn't from the book, this is actually from that Assassin's Creed walking tour.
Oh.
Or what was it? Walking tour?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It was called a walking tour? That's so funny because around the world they have walking tours, free walking tours. Where they tell you about places.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think so. you were walking, right?
True. Yeah.
I just assumed
a journey, and then we look at it. It's a journey odyssey. We're oh wow, I was so wrong. But yeah. So with Wikipedia, they were actually trying to recreate that, just a digital version of Library of Alexandria.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah. So after reading all this ancient stuff, and then you learning about and exploring animal culture and different civilizations, because you're the one who brought me to that what was that, the Great Human Migration. Check that out on BBC if you haven't seen it. It's really awesome. They talk about how we came out of Africa and all that stuff, and it makes sense as to why a lot of religions carry the same parables, very similar parables.
Even I just want to add it to a point. Even if we did come out of Africa, it's it's also we would come back and forth, not necessarily into Africa. In the Middle East, maybe we'd go north and come back, and then you know what I mean. It's multiple.
Right.
So
it's multiple migrations.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So because it's adding layers to layers. Sometimes some stories will match from different areas. It's but how did that happen? But it's just because it's not only one migration, right?
Totally. Yeah, for sure. So this Socratic Dialogue is about the pinnacle of spirituality. And I kind of want to give away the secret, the end note right in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's Zen, which is funny. That's where I'm really into the Zen Real Clothing, right? So Zen is the highest achievement. You're probably thinking how do you know Zen's the highest achievement? What do you mean? So we'll get into it. So we'll explore it further. I won't just give away the synopsis right away. But so there's the stoned ape theory, right?
Yeah.
Where they believe that apes would eat these mushrooms that were prevalent in the areas that they're in, and then that increased their level of conscious awareness to realize certain things and make grander patterns in their mind, right? And those patterns allowed them to think further, right?
Right.
And then other things farming, agriculture actually helped us think even further, and what created what we are today. Because instead of hunting and gathering for your food, you had more time. If you had a farm, to hoard that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So it's really in our. That's why they say thinking is it's a luxury, or it's only for the privileged. Yeah, that was what I was thinking of. Yeah, it's only for privilege, because it's if you're hunting and gathering all the time, it's how do you have time to think? You know what I mean? That's also what creates the poor staying poor and the rich staying richer, because it's they have more time to separate themselves further, right? A person who is living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, it's they're not thinking of how could they even advance?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just thinking about
work and then take care of their family, and that's all.
Yeah. So when you say oh, you should be more enlightened in the way you think, it's that's a privileged state to be like that. Because even the ancient animals, they were like that too, right? Because they needed the space to think, where agriculture came in. But so what's interesting is like we all started with this idea of like our imagination, right? So you would take like the mushrooms, and then you would have this experience, and then you're decoding your experience, right? And like oftentimes that would be considered a religious experience, right? Because like even through like meditation, like you'll see like lights and sounds in meditation, and it's like, are those spiritual experiences? But they're spiritual experiences because you've told yourself they're spiritual experiences.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what if they're just happenstance? What if they're just like a byproduct of what's happening, and you're attaching the narrative, right? So it's like the volcano gods,
yeah,
and like the Norse gods. Right? What was the Norse gods? Like in the beginning, they had like associations to like physical things in our reality, like Mount Olympus. It was just a giant mountain, so like, oh, the gods must live up there,
right?
You know what I mean? And like if you look into like Roman stuff, a lot of the gods took on like characteristic traits of us. Like there's the god of love, the god of like war, all these things, right? So it's like we get so caught up in what we don't know, that we attach like our assumption.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like, so would you say that through science we've been able to back that up? Like we've been able to like eliminate some of those things, and like, is science like the great purveyor of like what is real and what's not?
In some ways, yeah. I mean, you still have limitations to how much. I mean, it all depends on the technology, right?
Right. And so it's so funny that you said that, because it's like, when you don't know something, you create a story for it.
Yeah.
So it's like the limitations in science create another dogma, which is like the scientific dogma now. You know what I mean? It's like what is quantum physics? Well, we don't know. Okay, so like we're gonna create these like theories, right? Essentially, it's like science is like a religion in itself, because you're also producing theories that you're just testing. Do you know what I'm saying? Like any hypothesis is an assumption. It's like a guess. So if you look at it back then, their scientific tool was like analysis. So like if we killed a bunch of people and then it started to rain, then it's like, well, correlation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But like now we know correlation is not causation. There's other things involved in there. But like that's kind of where they're coming from. Yeah. You know? Or there's like Mayans who like would slaughter. Was it the Mayans?
Actually, yeah, bringing that up, that was funny. I was watching that finale of Succession yesterday, and there was a line about that. I wanted to bring that up somehow. Okay. You brought it up.
Whoa.
No, it's just like the
correlation, not causation?
No, not necessarily, but like just like they would like we view them as barbarians or something like that. Because when you hear like
peoples? Yeah, totally. Okay,
like when you hear like, oh, they killed their sons or whatever. Yeah. To get rain or something, but it's more like, it's like, what would you give up? What would you be your most loved thing that you would give up to get? You know what I mean?
Oh, so it's like an analogy. Yeah. Oh, interesting. You know, there's a story about that. I think it's like Abraham.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. It's similar to that, right?
Like he was supposed to kill his son, and then at the last second before killing his son, God appeared and was like, you do love me. And it's kind of like,
well, it's not about that. It was more like to survive, right? To get the rain gods to rain. Oh,
okay, yeah.
So it was like to.
What's the show called?
Succession.
Okay, well, what's it about? Is it about this? Like you're intriguing me. I'm like, oh, I should watch that.
It's not about that. No, it's it's like it's like a rich family in a business that it's so many things have happened. It's about this family, and then it's not as
so it's not really about religion.
No, it's not about religion, but he was bringing that up in context to what was going to happen in the show. Okay. Because he had to. Something came up with the company that was all these bad things, so someone has to be the sacrifice. Right. And he was talking to his son when he was saying that. There's a spoiler right now. Oh, okay. So that's why he brought that up. Right. It's like now he understood what they meant.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's fascinating. It's like we ultimately suffer from these things, and it's like what will we what will we do to alleviate our suffering from it? So like the oldest text, I know you're questionable on this, but like scientifically the oldest text that we have so far is the Sumerian text, and in that's where Gilgamesh is. He's the story of Gilgamesh, and like the whole parable is like he's in search of like overcoming death. So if he can find this place, I think it's a place, then he can like live forever. And it's like, yeah, that's our biggest fear. Like if our oldest text shows us that we're afraid of dying, then everything is like associated with like escape from death. Like even today.
Yeah. That story is also in Hinduism too, I believe.
Yeah, but that makes sense as to why it's. Yeah. It was because it was like it's the oldest one, and then you can see like fractals of it.
No, I know exactly.
Yeah. So like, so there's that one, and it's weird. It's weird how like we'll attach so much, to something we know little about. Like okay, so and it's interesting how our stories will evolve because of those things.
Yeah.
So like there was a climate change event that happened in England that they know now. It was just like, I think it was like just the time. So like for 4 years it was a lot colder. So it was like a global colding.
Yeah.
Right.
Cooling.
Cooling. Yeah.
Okay.
Global cooling. Yeah. Sorry, colding. Is a global cooling, and like from that.
Yeah.
It's global cooling is worse than global warming, because at least in warm climates you can still have something survive, but if it's too cold it can't survive, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of things were dying, and like plagues were coming about. This was during like the knights time, right? And from that came the story of King Arthur, because that was why he was searching for the Holy Grail. He had to undo, there was like some great spell or something, and like he had to undo this this global cooling, but they didn't know it was global cooling. They just thought it was like, like, a witch came and we need to stop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's fascinating from that perspective too, because it's like, it's like we're all just telling ourselves stories. So that,
I mean, that's the oldest thing about humans is like we've been always telling stories, right? That's
right. Totally. Yeah, exactly. Because what else do you do when you're around a campfire except tell stories?
Exactly.
So that's the first stage in it. We see something in life, and then this is like the beginning stage of spirituality, where it's like we see something, we don't know what it is, so we hypothesize, and then we create like I don't know how to explain it better than like it's an assumption. Like it's like a naive assumption is what spirituality really is. It's like, well, I need to connect more. It's like things you can't really you can't articulate it, but you can feel it. Right. So it's like we don't really know why this global cooling's happening. So if we like sacrifice a bunch of people, or we go on a quest, it's like maybe that'll alleviate it. It's like a naive assumption. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's that aspect to that. And then from that, we started to get like people who are just really great talkers, or people who like saw something that other people didn't. So it's like, if you understood that, okay, like if you didn't understand, like, let's say you're like walking and you keep hitting your head as you're walking. And you're like, but the lights are off in the room, and you keep walking towards something, you keep hitting your head. You don't see the opening, right? And then somebody who can see in the dark is like, hey, just duck your head a little bit and you can walk right through.
Right.
Like it's like a very simple solution, and then you're like, oh wow, you must be an enlightened being. So now we're moving into zones of like people with different perspectives that are applicable towards all aspects of humanity, and then like maximizing and capitalizing on that. That's where the whole like people of the book thing came from, right? Like Moses was the Jewish like I don't want to say superhero, but he was like the idol, right? He's the one who knew everything, right? And he was the chosen one. And then Jesus was for Christians or Catholics, and then Muhammad. Yeah, Christians and Catholics.
Oh, you said and.
Yeah,
okay.
Or Catholics. I said or.
Oh.
Like, it could be both. Like, they're essentially the same tribe, just different belief systems. True. Just like a slight alteration. And then like Muhammad is the one for Muslims, right? So you have like, like, let's not think of them as deities. Let's think of them as if they're humans. Like, all right, so they're humans. They've just come up with these insightful perspectives that they're sharing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, you get like people who understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
and then they follow you. But then if you look at it, a lot of them will say, actually, if you read like the Catholic Bible, which I did, he started to go like power hungry at a certain point, which is a little weird. After the Sermon on the Mount, there was like this evident point that like he started turning towards like, you should follow me.
Right.
It's susceptible to all humans. You get power hungry, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so like from there, other forms of spirituality are born, which is like, this person has the answer.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And but the problem with that is that you develop cults, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny because if you actually go into like reading more about it, or you visit these places, they'll say like the cult of Apollo, the cult of
Yeah.
you know, but it's like, because they knew they were cults.
Mm-hmm.
But like now we call them the religion of this, the religion of that.
Yeah.
But they're following the same structure.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like, I told this before, but like when I was in grade, like super young,
Mm-hmm.
like early grade, like 4, maybe 3, 4, something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, I think it was like during our first baptism, and like we were like, oh, we're learning about God and like what it means to be Catholic. And I was like, well, what's the difference between a cult and a religion?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you say that we are a cult because we have the same practices, we sacrifice things just like cults.
Right.
You know, we have like the sacrifice of reconciliation or whatever, and like,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So so from that, it's like, even a child can tell you like, this seems a little off.
Right.
But like, you believe in the person because it's like, we need to alleviate our suffering
Mm-hmm.
by putting the onus not on ourselves but on other people. Right? Like, if we follow this person, one day he'll free us of our suffering.
Right.
You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
And like, and from that religion was born. And that's where you have like Hinduism, you have Catholicism, you have like Taoism's in that too. Like, everyone's looking for an answer outside of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then there's that stage. So we start off with like the spiritual naivety, which is like, you'll see something, you have no science, so you're just going to assume. And then you have the next stage, which is like, you have these certain outliers that are telling you things that make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then they go power hungry and they're like, follow me.
Right.
Or they don't even go power hungry. They just start creating them into like these deified beings, sort of like the Dalai Lama of today.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what level of life experience do you have other than being surrounded by other people that call you a special being?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So it's like, if you spend your entire life being called you a special being, what kind of related life experience would you have towards my daily life?
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me to like, don't worry about it. You haven't been through it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, ultimately, all experiences are different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then from that, we get Buddha,
Yeah.
who was like, he was Hindu, and then he was like, okay, I don't like this caste system. I don't like all these aspects of it, because he was like pampered, right? He was like the Dalai Lama of the day. It's like, I'm going to be like, well, he wasn't spiritual, but he was like Prince.
Yeah.
Right? So like, you were sheltered, and then you were studied and all that, but like, you didn't see like suffering. And then, having seen suffering, he had like a freaking nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
And then went on this giant quest of asceticism to like let go of his suffering.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And then from that, he came up with like the middle way, which is like, not too hot, not too cold. Just don't go, like, really have no attachments. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
And become like, if you have no attachments or no desire, then you're out avoiding suffering.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, true.
But like, doesn't that kind of seem like a half empty way to live?
Yeah, that's.
You'd say you're like cutting yourself off, right?
Yeah.
You had that story about the Buddha's son.
I did.
Remember, like he brought his son in the like follow my monastery, and then like the son like hated him.
It's been so long.
All right, well,
Get your-
you had this like story of like the Buddha had a son, and then like when he put his son in the school, the son's like you.
Oh, you
like,
experience all these things.
Yeah, but you're like cutting me off.
Yeah.
From the jump. So it's like you want me to be like you, but I didn't get a chance to like see the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Which is again, that's the way. That's the ascetic way. You're like gonna cut yourself off from these things because like desire is not good, so just desire nothing.
But exactly. You've experienced it, so why can I experience what you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like he was trying to like save his son like the time and effort of having to go through all that, but it's like it's sort of like people who are like oh, find what you love to do, blah blah, but it's like I mean I say that too, but it's like you have to find your own path to your own truth. Like the right path is my path, you know, not literally my path, but like from your own perspective, it's like whatever you do, that's going to be your path.
Right.
Toward, if you feel better, then you create a path towards feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nobody, because everyone's experiences and perspectives are different. There's no one correct, one size fits all.
Yeah.
But what the Buddha was trying to do was like put it in this box. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But he found that one way that he should work for everyone or something.
Yeah.
And that's creating problematic right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's now if you look at it backwards, it's like one stage down, and the people that hear him, they're like, well, you have an enlightened perspective. We're going to follow you, and you're going to become a deity. Right. Even though he said, like, don't follow me.
Yeah.
But, like, see, even there, like, he didn't want to be followed, but you're being followed.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And then from that, well, Zen was born from that because, like, there was this parable of this person allegedly, like during Buddha's final like lecture, or like one of his most important lectures, and then like everyone, here's the exact story. So like he's like, okay, meet here, and then I'm going to tell you guys something amazing. So everyone like met up, they're like, oh, the Buddha hasn't spoken in so many years, so we're gonna like go. And then all he did was he sat there looking at a flower, and then one person like started laughing. And then he's like, bring this person up. And then he's like, you understand. So he like gave him the flower or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like from that, it's like Zen was born allegedly through like the lineage of it. Like that guy created Zen.
Right.
But we're not going to even delve into that yet.
Okay.
So then from the asceticism, you get like Tantra, which is like you indulge in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You, instead of like cutting yourself off from the world, it's like you indulge in everything in order to overcome everything. It's like you see your desire, you indulge so you see your desire so that you can like fight over your desire.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like the son of Buddha like being like, how come I have to cut myself off from the jump? So like the opposite way is like, okay, just go on the Buddha's path, like go do everything, and then that will be your lesson to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But even in that, it's like you're still using these like it's still incomplete, because like in doing that you can fall into like you can like trick yourself into like thinking, oh, I'm going to like do everything in this world. Like, I'm going to go out and like do a bunch of drugs. Why? Because I'm like tantric. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like now you're too far off the other spectrum. One side it's like I'm really ascetic, I'm not going to do anything, and the other side it's like I'm going to do everything.
Right.
You know, but then it's like, but if you're going to do everything, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And like again, it's like these people like searching for ways to give themselves meaning or alleviate their suffering.
Right.
Do you agree? Like
Yeah. I mean, as you were saying, it's doing what Buddha did. You're saying?
Yeah. because now it's indulging in everything.
Right. Like, but then I think in that way I get it, but it's like, but also Buddha was looking for something, right? He was on a direction. He was in a direction.
Right.
When their direction, I feel like it's just to do the Tantra, where that's not the direction he was going in.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying.
Like his end mission wasn't that, right?
But that's why I say it's slippery. It's like some people will do everything because they're like, well, we got to live it up. But it's like, but you don't realize you're doing everything in order to like quell something.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Like if they're like, oh man, my life would be better if I did this, and then they go do it, and it's like, oh, I'm unhappy still. Okay, well, my life would be better if I did this. So you start pursuing things in order to fill a void.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like ultimately, you're fulfilling your You're trying to like fill a void, which is your void of suffering. Right. So now we have the levels of like the naive spirituality, which is like we have no science, so we're just gonna make up stuff. Then you have like the cult followings, and then from that you have like the ascetics, and then from that you have like the we'll do everythings, right? So this is why I like Zen, because like Zen is like, why are you even thinking about any of that? Right? It's like when you don't think about those things, then you are just doing things. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like just live your life. If you are suffering, you are suffering. If you're not suffering, you're not suffering. If you're happy, you're happy. If you're not, but ultimately, if you absorb fully into that, there is no happy, sad, suffering, no suffering, because you're so absorbed in your task. That like it's essentially flow states. Right?
Yeah.
Which is what like a lot of scientists are big on right now. They're all into like meditation because they're like, oh, if you meditate, you can enter into a flow state, right? But when people say like, my life is a meditation, they're not actually. That's really what it is, because it's like you can sit there and just meditate and enter into a flow state, or you can play video games and enter into a flow state, or you can go for a walk and enter into a flow state.
Right.
See what I'm saying? It's like
whatever you're doing. Yeah.
That's when your entire life becomes a meditation, right? Because you're not trying for anything; you're just doing. And that's why they say like the way is so simple, but it's so hard. It's so simple because like just do whatever you're doing, but it's so hard because the mind will kick in like, should I be doing this right now? Shouldn't I be believing in a deity? You know what I mean? Like.
But then, yeah, I guess. But everyone's on a different timeline, right?
Right, and that's so okay. So it's interesting how it's like everything goes full circle, right? You start off with being like, I need to alleviate the suffering, so you go on this whole journey. Like you go on this whole journey to transcend, right? You start off where you are, and you're like, I need to transcend my experience,
right?
And then you go on this whole like 4-step path to like come back to where you are, where it's like, oh no, I don't need to transcend anything because my experience is my experience. You didn't really transcend your life. You just looked at your life in a different way.
Yeah. Right.
Which ultimately is what enlightenment is. It's enlightenment's perspective. It's like, if I understand that this is a finite experience, I will treat it differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I understand that there are other people outside of myself, I will treat it differently.
Yeah. Right.
If I understand that there are things between science and things that are not scientific at all, I will treat it differently.
Yeah.
Right? But when you said like there's like people are in different stages, so what I think of it is like, it's just a toolbox. Sometimes you use Zen, sometimes you use religion, sometimes you use personal story. So like I had to get this like cavity field. This was years ago. I had to get this cavity filled, but I knew it was all in my head. But I was like, all right, God, why are you letting this happen? You know, like, don't let this happen, God. And it's like, but I knew there was no God, but it's like I needed the tool.
Yeah.
You know, it's just toolboxes, tools and toolboxes. And I think that's what, you know, spirituality ultimately gives you. It's like, how do you overcome your suffering? Well, there are a myriad of ways. Choose one.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah, use the different tools.
Or use the different tools. But I'm saying, like, the highest achievement is to realize you don't need the tool.
Mm-hmm.
But we all need tools. You know?
Yeah.
Like, some days you're going to be like, I need a beer right now. You know? Like, some days I need to just veg out on the, you know what I mean? Like, true self-care is like adapting to what it is you need in that moment.
Yeah.
You know? Not just living your life statically, because we don't live in a static existence. We're always changing, right? Our moods are always changing. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just like vibing really, really heavy with that recently. Because like, it's like, because I know like when I post stuff, it's like very like, it's like, well, do you believe in this or do you believe in this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like sometimes if I talk about chakras or if I don't talk about shit, it's like, so do you believe in chakras or you don't believe in chakras?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in this or you don't believe in this?
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's a toolbox, bro. Like, just pick and choose what tools you need in that moment. And like, because ultimately it's like stories. Like, these tools are just stories, like self-reminders, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to wear that power mala when you're doing something difficult. You know, that's what like amulets are for. Like, the Egyptians used to like wear amulets to overcome like things or give themselves strength. And it's like, yeah, that's real if you believe it to be real.
Yeah. Yeah, placebos are real.
It's placebo. It is placebo.
But placebos are real. That's the thing.
Yeah, placebos are real. Yeah. But they're also not real. See what I'm saying? It's like, it's all in your head. Like, the actual item isn't real, but the side effect is real.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's why I like Taoism and Zen, because like it's all in paradoxes, right? So like that's why I find it so fascinating. Even like Einstein said like the religion of the future is going to be Buddhism, because it's all about studying the mind. But Einstein didn't hit Zen, where it's like, well, you need both. You know, you need to fake it sometimes, and you need to not fake it sometimes. You know.
Well, he was focusing on how to figure out the universe.
That's true. Yeah. But so like that's why I like Zen being paradoxes, because when you hear it, so like they're like logical paradoxes. Mm-hmm. That's how I view them, right? It's like placebo. All right, are placebos real? They're both real and not real.
Yeah.
And then somebody's gonna be like, well, that's paradox. Can't be both real and not real. But it's like a logical paradox. Yeah, it is real if you believe it to be real, but it's also not real because the item itself's not gifting anything.
Yeah. Right.
But the effect is the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was what you got from the book?
No, this is from like just studying everything, but it like jogged my memory reading the book, because I was like, people go on like these crazy like crusades, or they'll like kill other people for this stuff, and it's like,
oh, you were talking about that, right?
Yeah,
like there was no like the treatment that we talk about now, like between peoples, is way different than what it was not that long ago, right?
Wait, oh, sorry, treatment.
Like
the
like
way we treat others,
like the way we treat others.
Yeah. I think about treatment, I was like, what?
No,
medical? No, the way, yeah. All right, so like that great example of like when people are like, oh, we need to elevate our consciousness, become enlightened,
So you think that may have affected why religion would be there? Because it's like
it was so ridiculous.
It was but because you know, life could be very short.
100%. Yeah. So there's this like line, there's no atheist in foxholes, right? If you look at every MMA fighter, they're believing in some sort of God. Yeah. Because they're in a freaking foxhole. Like, it's so dangerous doing what you're doing. And like being in that space, you know, it again, privileged state, right? Like they weren't privileged to like be safe. So they couldn't really go beyond their like tool. They're like level in the freaking hierarchy. Yeah. Right. But like, so like that story of when people are like, oh, you should become more enlightened as a species and we should treat each other better. It's like, you just didn't look into history, because like there's that story where like the opposing army, he ordered them to be blinded, and then the last person had to blind himself, so he had one eye, and then they would like hold onto each other's backs, and then they'd walk back to the camp so that the person could, like the general could see like, oh, this just happened to your army and this can happen again. You know what I mean? Like we had no like concept of like other people, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like,
so it makes more.
Of course, you would need some. You're like,
Yeah.
What a like. All right, another good example. So the Huns were just like this Turkish tribe. I think they're like more close to Asian than like European, something like that. But anyway, so like so Rome at the time was believed to be the city of God, because that's where like the Pope resided. So like when the Huns declared that they're going to go after Rome, they didn't see the Huns as like humans anymore. They're like, demons are coming to attack us.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, because you can't, you're in a state of panic and fear. You can't like really absorb these things. You're going to need a lower level tool at that point. It's like when I had the cavity and it's like, I'm going to need to use God right now because I'm in a stage where I can't think logically, so I need a toolbox, you know?
Right.
I guess that's really what it is, like your baser level of emotion at that point. You know, if you're like vibing out life at like a lower level, then it's like you will need a lower level toolbox. It's closer to your survival mechanism, so you're going to create something on that scale at that time period.
Right.
You know, the time period of like not really knowing, because they were all living in fear. But then now that people are like not living in fear, like during the Zen revolution, it's like a lot of people were, it was like already after the fact, like we were at a peacetime. You still have like samurai, but like, you know, you had moments to think.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I don't want to give it like as if it's something is lower necessarily, right?
Okay.
Because it's just,
it's where you are in the totem pole.
Yeah.
But totem poles are built up.
well, I don't think,
So it's
I don't
like-
want to say, I don't even add that too then, right?
So it's like a circle.
Yeah. It's just
Which
wherever you're at.
You know what's
there's no-
you know what's ironic about Zen symbol? The Zen symbol is a circle.
Okay.
Because where you start is where you're gonna end up.
Yeah. So.
That's the whole like idea behind it. It's like you hit this point when you're young, you start creating separation barriers, right? You're like, what am I gonna do when I grow up? Whoa, does everyone have everything figured out? Like all this doubt starts coming in.
Right.
So you spend your whole life in search of some answer, only to realize like you didn't leave. Like you go on a quest to become enlightened, you come back enlightened, and it's like you're still dealing with the same damn problems.
Right.
But just through a different lens. You're like looking at a new perspective. And I think that's why they say like everyone's enlightened. Because like you're enlightened to something, you know, because enlightenment's just perspective.
Right.
Right? It's like, just what are you enlightened about?
Okay. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like all right, so to a child who knows nothing, right? To a child who knows nothing, it's sort of like that story. Well, pause before we go into that example, but it's sort of like Carl Jung said, like we eat from the tree of knowledge, right, to become conscious, right? So Adam and Eve were unconscious; they became conscious through eating from the tree of knowledge. Then they have to become super conscious to realize that it's all in their head. You know, you have to do all this work to realize like your consciousness is ultimately victimizing your experience.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like this. So like you have like a little kid, and then to be like, oh, mom and dad are enlightened because they know more than me, right?
Yeah.
But their perspective is that there's a ghost out there that's like watching over you, right? And then so that's that is like you're enlightened to something. Yeah, all right, there is a ghost out there, right? But then when you do like more and more research, you realize, oh no, the ghost is in your head. So you've become like even more enlightened than your previous enlightenment.
Okay.
So it's like there is no like, I guess you can say that there's no, because you're like, oh, there's no hierarchy enlightenment. Yeah, you're right. Because like, what if there's something else out there that's like what if we find out through science, it's like, no, if we just remove this one part in our brain, then we won't even be thinking about this anymore.
Right.
And then I become even more enlightened. Then it's like, oh no, I just have to overcome my, like, why am I even thinking about these things, right? That's what I said, like, Zen is like the highest point where it's like, why are you even thinking about it?
Yeah.
Well, then to be even more enlightened than that, it's like, okay, just let's surgically remove this part of our brain so we don't even have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like there's like always going to be some sort of enlightenment happening, or like you'll read a book and you're like, I didn't know about this. Like, you know, enlightenment's a process. So that, I guess that's why they say like enlightenment's the work of enlightenment, because you're always finding out about something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to be an enlightened being, it's like just somebody who doesn't know as much as you will always be an enlightened being to them.
You know,
like a 5-year-old thinks friggin' mommy and daddy are enlightened beings, but then like a PhD like professor is like, oh, mommy and daddy aren't enlightened beings, I'm an enlightened being. You know what I mean? It's like, what?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But then, so then that's why I wrote those articles about like enlightenment, and then Satori, which is like, Satori is like when you're so into something, you stop. No, sorry. Satori is enlightenment. Zazen is where you're not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because you're so absorbed in your thing.
Right.
Right. You have no time to think. All of your faculties are being used in this one task.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have time to think about anything else.
Right.
You know, I wonder if that's why people get addicted to war too.
Addicted to war?
Yeah, because they come back after war. You know, like
they only know that, right?
But like in that moment, it's like we have one objective. Everything seems so clear. You know, don't think about anything. Think about the mission. Survive, and then you come back and you're like, okay, well, taxes. Okay, what about mortgages? And you're like, what are all these thoughts?
Yeah, because you get used to one thing, right?
Yeah, it's simple. Like
and
life is simpler on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's for anything, right? You get used to one thing in a repetitive way that's becomes easier, right? And if anything new pops in, it's like it's more difficult to deal with.
Totally, yeah.
And you just want to go back to what you're good at, or what you were good at.
Because the mind hasn't interjected yet. Because in that thing, it's become so flow-like.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to think.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I used to work at the bakery, this was like one of the first encounters of Zen, but I didn't know it was Zen. But like I'd be like sweeping, and I was like, wow, this is such a peaceful experience. Or like I'd be like packing the bread, and I was like, oh, this is such a peaceful experience, you know. Because but I had to train myself to think that, because it's like, are you at 8 hours to like pack this bread and like sweep the thing, you know? It's like these are mundane tasks, but it's like you find the miracle of the mundane.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that happens. Maybe that happens to a lot of people, right? But they don't realize they're doing.
No, 100%. Like fishermen, you know, like. I think. Yeah, I agree. I was gonna say like, I think like simple tasks are where it's at. Like, I think if you just get caught up in your own experience, that's when issues start happening.
Right.
You know, just to realize like, no, there's a bigger world out there. You don't really matter, even though that's negative. So it's like, here's the logical paradox again. Yeah. It's like, you don't matter, but you do matter. I said this thing like, you matter less than you know. No, you matter more than you think and less than you know.
Right.
Because it's like, well, but how can I be both? It's like, yeah, because you do matter more than you think, because you are having this experience, and less than you know, because you're still a part of like this grand thing.
Yeah.
So it's like you are special, but also not special.
Yeah.
If every snowflake is a unique snowflake, then they're not unique snowflakes. They're just snowflakes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I guess live out your experience, and that's all. Live out your experience. If it sucks right now, it sucks right now. If you believe in these deities, you believe in these deities. If you don't, you don't. Like the great way is we're all like in like spirituality, the Tao. The great way is we're already on our way. It's only the delusion that thinks we need to change anything.
Okay, right.
But I guess even the delusion person is still in their own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you read a lot about that. It's like, everything is perfect how it is. This is the way it is. You can't take anything away from... Like, if you read all these, like, spiritual Zen books, it's like, everything's already perfect. Why are you trying to change it from being perfect?
Right.
Like, that's the whole... That's, like, the primary lesson. Like, every single thing is about that. Just ways to get to it, or it's like you're thinking too much, or like do this, you know, like they're just like ways of thinking, ways of approaching the problem in your mind in order to realize that everything's is as it should be. It is what it is, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
In Sherlock, when he lost his wife, when John Watson lost his wife, the only thing that saved him is he kept saying it is what it is. Because that's what it is. It's like, Zen is like the epitome of acceptance. You just accept everything. Because that is, like, obviously you work towards changing it. There's the logical paradox again. It's like, well, if you accept everything, can you change things? Like, yeah, you can change things.
Mm-hmm.
But you also can't change things. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Levels to it.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So next week, do you believe in fate?
Fate is what you make of it.
I believe in fate. Because I believe in mathematics. Unless you're Terrence Howard.
And it's all wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, in some way, I guess, sure.
Right,
I mean, I don't know.
cause and effect.
It's not something I think about, so.
But, like, all right, if we logically think about it, it's like cause and effect. If there is a cause to something, then there's no random, so there is no room for deviation.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Just thinking too much. All right.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to check out EGLX. That's what it is, right? EGLX?
ELGX or EGLX?
Whatever.
One of those
One
things.
of those.
Something new that we've
never
been to.
Yeah, I've never been to it. Where'd you see this? Like,
the Google Ads ways. The way
really?
I think so.
Wow, that's awesome. Didn't expect that. They actually work, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to check out that gaming convention, and we'll report back. Hopefully it's dope. I believe it will be.
We'll see.
Yeah. I hope.
Oh, you believe it will be? Okay.
I believe it will be.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going in with, I don't know.
You're just going to go in Zen. You're going to be like, it is what it is.
That's true, yeah. Probably end up being like
right? And I'm going to go in with the desire. I'm going to go in with Tantra, being like, oh, to me, it's going to be everything.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
All right, so until next time. Pick up some teas on Zenreal, zenrealclothingco.com.
Yes.
And take this philosophy with you wherever you go. See how I put that together? That's right. All right, till next time. Take it easy.
Peace.